One of my favorite things we ate in Taiwan was this Rou Fan, or braised pork over rice, that punches way above its weight class. It is the definition of comfort food. My favorite version we had was really fragrant, pretty fatty, really sweet, and the pork pieces were like so small that they almost intermingled with the rice as you scooped it up and ate it. It was so good, and I'm gonna show you a pretty easy way to replicate that at home. As always, we're gonna start with a little knife work. Shallots are a really important fragrant ingredients for this dish. Lots of recipes call for fried shallots to be added to the braise later, but I just prefer to cook them down with the pork as I go. This saves me the trouble of having to buy fried shallots or making them separately. Remove the peel and then dice them. Mince or grate a few cloves of garlic as well while you got the board out. Now, the pork itself needs to be fatty and tender. You're looking for basically little cubes of pork meat and pork fat. Pork belly is really the perfect option for this. Cut about 1.5 pounds of pork belly into small bite-sized pieces. I like to cut the belly in half down the middle before dicing it. In Taipei, when we went to these places, most of the pork pieces were really small. It was almost more about the fatty sauce mixing with the rice than it was about these large chunks of pork like you see on a lot of recipes online. So I wanted to replicate what we had in Taiwan. When I first tried the dish, I compared it to pork sprinkles, and I think that's a pretty accurate representation. To me, it's all about the flavorful sauce that's gonna coat the rice. The pork is almost there as a bonus. These are the size I like, larger than the rice, but not huge chunks. When your prep is done, it's time to head over to the stove and make the braise. Grab a large pot or a Dutch oven, something that can sit on the stove for a while. To double down on the porky flavor, this has gotta be cooked in lard. Heat the pan over medium and add a tablespoon of the pork fat. Once hot, add in the pork pieces and then cook them until the water is gone and they start really just kind of taking on a little bit of color. At about 5 minutes of cooking, the pork should be nice and pale. So at this point, I like to add the diced shallots. Keep those moving over medium-high heat so they can brown and caramelize with the pork. Another 5 minutes of cooking like that should net you some really nice browning, and the shallots should smell amazing. Add the garlic in next and then cook that until it just doesn't smell like raw garlic anymore, probably about a minute or two. Most of the flavor that we need for this dish comes from 3 main ingredients: soy sauce, sugar, and shaoxing wine. The rest is pretty much a bonus. 2 tablespoons of shaoxing wine to the pork and then add the sugar in. In my case, I think Coke works crazy well here. I would bet my life that some Rou Fan vendors use Coke as a sweetener. The sugar content, seasoning, and caramel color all make total sense here. 2 tablespoons of Coca-Cola is good. Add in 2 tablespoons of soy sauce and 1 tablespoon of oyster sauce. For aromatics and spices, the options are pretty limitless. I'm gonna use 5 spice powder and some spices I usually have on hand: bay leaf and star anise. You could really go nuts here. You could keep it super simple like I do. This is kind of just a base template for you to go off of. To ensure that the pork cooks evenly, we need enough water to cover it and then some. In my pot, 2 cups of water is about perfect. I like to cook this at a bare simmer with the lid off so some reduction will occur. Every time I saw this being made in Taiwan, it was in a massive bubbling vat that must have been simmering for hours. My recommendation is to simmer this no less than an hour. Anything more is a bonus, but keep an eye on the liquid levels. This shouldn't reduce too much, but it's easy to adjust with more water or heat as needed. Here's what I like to do. Right at the 1 hour mark, I like to make the required rice to accompany the glistening pork morsels. I've got a rice cooker that I usually use, but if you don't have one, here's how to cook really good white rice. So the first step is to wash a cup of white rice until the water runs clear. This usually needs like 4 rinses or so. What I like to do is fill the bowl with water and the rice, mix my hand in there, get it around, and then pour the water off. And I do that a couple times till it runs clear. Drain as much of the water as you can just by eye, and then add it to a pot with 1 1/4 cup of water. A good rule of thumb in general is about 2 parts water to 1 part rice or so, but washing the rice means it's gonna absorb some liquid before it even goes into the pot. When you don't account for that, the rice can end up with too much liquid, and it's kind of that like soft, gummy texture rather than distinct granules. Bring the water to a simmer over medium-high and then turn it all the way down. Cover the rice with a tight-fitting lid and cook for 20 minutes without touching it. Once those 20 minutes are up, turn off the heat and let it sit another 10. Then you can remove the lid and fluff the rice with a fork or a paddle. That's my recommendation for getting nice, well-cooked steamed rice on the stove. By the way, these are kind of the 2 rice brands that I use most regularly. They're both Calrose rice, which is actually an American California grown rice. It has like a slightly sticky texture, but also gets really well coated when you use it for stuff. Any generic sort of white rice cookery, one of these 2 is pretty much what I use. I like the Calrose rice a lot. It's traditional to add boiled eggs to the pot of pork. Normally you would probably do that about the 1 hour mark, but I would always skip the egg when I ordered it, so I'm gonna leave them out today. Mock me all you want, but I don't really want to waste the eggs, and eggs are pretty expensive right now, so I'm just gonna leave them out. Just know you could totally hard boil some eggs and add it into the pot with the pork at about the 1 hour mark. Here is the pork after an hour and a half. The fat is perfectly rendered. The meat is tender, and the sauce is this beautifully sweet, porky goodness. The versions we walked past and ate in Taiwan almost always featured about probably ½ an inch to an inch of fat at the top that they would have to stir through to get the pork and sauce up onto the rice. And I think that is a requirement for cooking this dish at home. That fat is the perfect thing to coat each and every grain of rice. A couple of other nice things to flesh this out would be some steamed greens. This could be bok choy, Taiwanese spinach, just regular old spinach from the fridge, one of those packs of protein greens, just anything green. Normally this is served as sort of a snack, so I like it in little bowls with just rice and pork and sauce, but you could totally flesh this out as a whole meal. To me, I think the best way to eat this is in small bowls, so you can fill it with rice, top it with the pork and the sauce, and then just slurp it down really quickly. Fill yourself another one if you want more. I mean, that's it. It's really simple. It's cubed up pork belly, cooked in a slightly sweet, slightly salty sauce, and it is about as perfect as a simple dish can be. As I mentioned in the beginning, this was one of my favorite things we ate in Taiwan, and it was so nice to be able to eat this again and just be reminded of that trip. The smell itself was enough to bring my wife and I right back into Taipei. I mentioned this is sort of my template for Rou Fan that I really like, but modding this to your personal taste is really, really easy, and I've got a few recommendations. The version I really liked in Taiwan was a little bit lighter, a little bit sweeter, and a little bit more pork flavored. If you want a Rou Fan that's a little bit more soy flavored and a little bit more salty, add dark soy sauce. It works and makes a really, really delicious Rou Fan, but for me, too much soy creates a really salty dish that also has a little bit of that like soy sauce aftertaste. I prefer a more clean, porky aftertaste when I eat this dish. So you could totally add this if you want it. It's gonna look a little bit, I would say, nicer, honestly. Like, this is a lot of color versus just the regular soy sauce, but I don't think that's too much of a big deal. So dark soy sauce is my recommendation if you want it more salty. Just add about a tablespoon of that. If you want it sweeter, add another tablespoon of Coke while you're cooking it. It's not gonna overdo it. It's still not gonna taste like soda. It's just gonna work really well to bring a little bit more sweetness. Now, if you follow this channel, you're gonna know I'm giving you a spicy recommendation. If you want it spicy, you can totally add white pepper to this. Like, a good amount of white pepper adds a hot taste. That's really delicious. Or you could, add some Sichuan pepper powder. Just something to bring a little bit of spice as it's cooking could be really nice. Even better, you could find something cool like this at an Asian grocery store, which is Taiwanese hot chili sauce. Super delicious, really, really good. Totally not required by any means though. You can just leave this as is. Don't need toppings, don't need anything crazy, just the pork and the rice, and you're gonna be having a great time. Thank you so much for watching. I really appreciate you being here. Massive shout out to the amazing people supporting me directly on Patreon through patreon.com/CameronMarty. They get some cool benefits for supporting the channel. There's stuff like direct access to me, earlier videos, and the list goes on. Consider checking it out and consider becoming a patron. If this piqued your interest and you want to learn a little bit more about my wife and I's time in Taiwan, go ahead and check out this video I did about our travels. It was really, really fun to make, and I think you would get a lot out of it if you're at all interested in the food scene there. Thanks again for watching. Cheers.